tape. As I mentioned in the very beginning, we on? As I mentioned in the very beginning, doing anything with Hebrew is like mathematics. In order to do calculus, you have to be able to add and subtract, and before you can add and subtract, you've got to know how to count, and before you know how to count, you have to recognize the difference in the digits. What's 1 compared to 2, compared to 3? They're not just symbols, but they actually mean something. Of course, there's simply quantity. There's one of these. Now there's 2 of these, or 3. So it's very interesting. You could say, well, that's obvious. No, it's only obvious because that's the way he made it. What if math worked differently? Well, we don't even know what that means because math is just the way the universe works. But Yahuwah, Ehyeh, he determined the way the universe works. So what we see as obvious is not obvious really at all, other than the fact that he made it that way, which puts your mind in this whole astounding place. He is astounding. We're astounded by what he made. But if you recognize, okay, this is a 1, this is a 2, or a 0 and a 1 binary code, and then you get into all these other concepts. Or 3, that's like Aleph and Bet. So once you recognize the letters, you got Paleo, you got modern script, which I don't even recognize. When I look at it, I can figure out why it's like that, but it hasn't retained, the modern Hebrew script, so I can't go to Israel and read the stuff. But I can look in the dictionary and figure stuff out with modern, what they call block letters. But, so you recognize the letters, and then adding and subtracting is the spelling of words. And once you start spelling words and recognizing that words are just what they are, but then they have a concept behind them, that's another level. And then when you start constructing sentences and you realize that even the translators disagree, a couple of us were looking at a certain word that it says this, another translation says the opposite, literally exactly the opposite. So which is it? When even the translators can't agree, it shows you that you're not out of your league. That is the league. The league is nobody can prove what these words really mean. Even the professional translators who have been going to school, a bunch of letters after their name, they're paid, they're authorized, they got priests and sages and pastors spouting the words and backing them up and authorizing and validating, they still don't agree. So if you don't agree, you're right in league with them. Don't feel bad if you see something different. What I'm saying is this is the sandbox to play in. It's like words spelled with letters. When we give them to children, they're on little blocks. And the only thing that's illegal about playing with the blocks is don't pick one up and throw it at your brother or sister. But you can play with the blocks. You can play with the letters. You can look at them. You can arrange them in different ways. Other people get mad at the way you might play with them, but he gave this to us to mess with, to mess around with. So once you get the words where you can mess around with them, then you can see the way they're set into sentences. Now we've got bigger concepts to deal with. And once you've got bigger concepts to deal with, and you realize that the concepts are messed around with by the official translators, and that words and sentences are shifted around in order to find some sense of meaning, then you have different levels of meaning, where you've got, this is a term I believe the rabbis have come up with. It's called, right? You have this word paradise. Boy, for some reason it looks wrong. Anyway, the consonants is P-R-D-S. So P-R-D-S, even though those are English, it happens to line up with Pei, Resh, Dalet, Samic. It could have been a Sheen, but just so you know, there's 2 letters that sound like an S. 3 if you count a Tav. Anyway, this stands for Pashat level. This is a English spelling of a Hebrew phonetic, just so you know, not to get into that detail. This is Rosh. No, excuse me, Remez.
Sorry, where is this coming from? The Pashat and Remez?
This is concepts of learning, concepts of studying. This is a kind of a rabbinical thing. This is what I've learned about how the rabbis see it. Now, I can't tell you which rabbi, nor can I tell you if it's Talmud or the way they study, but I'm just going to show you something about how to study the language. And this is called drash. Have you ever heard anybody talk about going to a midrash? Okay, that's mem, dalet, resh, shin. Midrash. The place of drashing. So these are Hebrew words I'm spelling with English phonetics. And this is sod, the sod level. So Pashat literally means the surface narrative. In other words, when you look at a text, just read the story. Just read the story. That's one way to study the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What does that mean? It means that in the beginning, the guy who was all-powerful before the beginning, he himself, or it itself, whatever that means, some deity figure who's beyond us, caused by his act to create the heavens and the earth, period. That's that level. Now this is the remez, which from my understanding is the allegorical. So Yeshua gave us parables, the story of the sower and the seed. What's that mean? That means the sower went out and cast seed on the ground, and they grew. And some had a hard time growing, and some didn't grow. Well, what's that mean? That's what it is. It's a story of a sower with seed. What's the allegorical meaning? So the disciples, the Talmudim, came to Yeshua and says, hey, what do you mean by this? What are you trying to tell us? Oh, okay, the seed is the word. The soil that it lands on is different qualities of people's hearts. And whether they receive the word, whether the word grows and develops. See, the seed, like I said, is like the letters Kaf and Lamed. Receiving the seed into your heart is the Mem and Nun. And then what you do with it once that sprouts is the Samak Ayin Pei. I'm plugging this in, but just telling them the allegory of the seed and the word is the Remez, the allegorical. Then Drash is where you really start seeking it out and saying, okay, now how does this tie in? And that's where you get more like the doctrinal level of really trenching in and constructing the kingdom, as it were. Brad Scott tells us that sod, spelled Samek Vav Dalet, is family secrets. Now, if they're family secrets, even the theologians talking about Midrash aren't going to get it. Talking about the Moedim must be sod level, because after all these centuries, the churches don't even acknowledge it. Oh, we have nothing to do with that. Why? Because it's family secrets. And the Jews who keep the Moedim tell the Goyim, leave our stuff alone. Just get out of here. Go play in your own sandbox. And it's actually, according to what I've heard about, remember there's two Talmuds, the Jerusalem Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, and they literally will fill at least 10 feet wide on a bookshelf of solid writings. Somewhere in there, just so you know, somewhere in there it says, any goy who tries to keep the Sabbath ought to be put to death. Any goy who thinks that he's going to keep the Moedim and starts pantomiming, or how do the Jews do it? Okay, let's do the same thing. They light the candle. Okay, let's light the candles. Oh, they eat unleavened bread. Let's eat unleavened. Any goy that tries to copy the Jews and imitate or make it their own ought to be put to death. And if you speak the inutterable name, you ought to be put to death. That's on the books, just so you know. Again, I said the other day, this is dangerous information. So at the sod level, they are authorized to kill the goys. Now, as I said, a goy is somebody who doesn't know how to navigate, who has nothing to do with the covenant of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. The goys can probably read the Peshat level, and they might even be aware of some Remez level, especially go to Christian church, and there's a lot of allegory. In fact, they look back at the Old Testament and infer allegorically that all these things were pictures and types of Christ, right? Drosh, might have to go to seminary. But Sod, they disintegrate the whole Old Testament. My nephew went to a Christian Bible college somewhere in Minnesota, or wherever it was, and they said, we're not going to study 3 books. We'll study all the other books of the Bible. You can look at them on your own, but, why bother? 3 books. Anybody want to guess, maybe, which 3 books this Christian Bible college 4-year... Leviticus for sure. No, Genesis is how he created the heavens and the earth. We ought to study that. No, well, a lot of people don't study Song of Solomon because it's kind of gets lewd if you get into the allegorical thing. But no, that was one of them they studied. They were not going to study 3 books. No, these are the Christian college. Isaiah, boy, that's right in there, especially Isaiah 53. I mean, that points to the Messiah, huh? Numbers, Leviticus, and believe it or not, Deuteronomy. Really. I mentioned this the other day, the first word in the book of Leviticus is not Leviticus, it's Vayikra. And it's translated, and he called. Who called? Yahweh called. And the word called, kara, isn't just called, it's he shofar, beckoned, summoned, invited to assemble to learn how to read the scriptures. That's what Vayikra means. So by changing the name to Leviticus and saying the Levitical order's been nailed to the cross, we don't have to do anything about it. It has nothing to do. It's impertinent. It's not pertinent to our covenant. Then you can close the book on Leviticus and throw it away. Yet Leviticus 23 is the quintessential chapter that talks about the Moedim, where Yahuwah said, okay, let me tell you the list of Jewish festivals. No. These are my personal Moedim, which I am giving to you, my personal Segula, treasured people Israel. Oh, hey, that's Sod. So if Vayikra, Leviticus, is Sod, even if you get down to the Drosh, it's got nothing to do with you. So, just so you know, am I saying that if you don't go below the surface of the level, you're going to hell? No. Am I saying if you don't go below down to here, you're not his people? No, I'm not saying that. Am I saying that everybody ought to be here listening and watch this tape and memorize it? No. But if you want to know about Yahweh's family secrets, and you want to reach paradise, hey, here's some information that you can listen to and then relate to him and talk to him about it and spend some time studying and figure it out because it's your personal walk. But if nobody ever tells you about this stuff, or that stuff, and they say, oh, read the Bible, it's hard to understand. There's all these other levels. And interesting that the word paradise in English lines up with this Pardes, which is an acronym. Now, here's another interesting thing. We read yesterday at Morning Manna, sorry, that's the only one I've been to, but it's so darn early, gosh. But you weren't up at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about stuff either, you know. Anyway, in Leviticus 23, where Yahweh is really, really reprimanding the false prophets and priests and pastors who are leading his people astray and saying, the measure that you use is going to be measured back to you. As you have caused my people to stumble, so Yahweh says he's going to see to it that they're going to be like, now he's giving an analogy. He said, it's like I'm going to put you in a place where you're in the dark and then make you stumble by shoving you over an obstacle so you trip and fall, and then the storm of Yahweh is going to sink into your head, sinking its talons, picturing an eagle embedding its claws into the back of a fish to carry it up and away. That's what he's going to do to those guys. which is measure for measure exactly what they've been doing to his people. That's Leviticus 23. And then he says, people are getting these dreams. Oh, I had a dream. And he says, what's the dream compared to the word? What's the dry, empty chaff of straw compared to the kernel? It's like, we have like a rock. Well, my word is a hammer that crushes the rock. And he says, then he says this, if any of them had been exposed to my mystery or secret counsel, then let them tell my people to turn from their wicked ways and come back to the terms of the covenant. And that word for secret counsel is actually this word here, Samik Vav Dalet, sod. So then one might say, well, what is that? We can look in the dictionary to get the interpretation of that word. And just so you know, for how to use the dictionary and how to study, there's another word spelled Yod, Samik Dalet, which is Yesod. And there's a word spelled Samik Dalet Mem, which is Sodom, like the city of Sodom. And then there's the word Samik Dalet Resh, which is where we get Seder, which is the order of the Passover, and Siddur, if you put a Vav in here, which is organized prayers, like song sheet, you could say is virtually a Siddur of a type. So it's something that's arranged according to the way it's designed. Now, if you look at this Samik, you can almost see a spine with ribs, the backbone structure. You can also see the mast of a ship with the yard arms going across to hold the square rig sails. It's also like a telephone pole, where you have to have this one engineered with stress loads, planted how deep with how many bolts to handle what kind of tension pulled along the wires. It's all calculated. It's all designed. It's an engineered, it's a trellis system. When you frame a house and the engineers have to figure how it goes, even the cross is an engineered design to hold up one who would be crucified, or a trellis holding up roses. It's all the same thing. So there's something, this word Yesod means he ordered and arranged. So there's something about the sod level, which is the order and arrangement of the door. So, not to belabor that too much, but I'm just showing you that there's a method of how to study. But you might say, when he says, had they been exposed to, you could say also, well, you look at the word exposed, and it's to put on exhibition, or caused to perceive, or caused to understand. So what I'm trying to show you is the ordered, it's not here, it's the alphabet, but the ordered arrangement of Yahuwah's Aleph Bet, lining up with being the door, who is Yahushua. All looks like sewed stuff of family secrets, because it's the Moedim and Yom HaShabbat and HaMashiach, and walking with him at an intimate level as he designed it, recognizing the 7 days of creation. What I'm saying is that some people have even said that studying this Aleph Bet is a sod level of the sod matters. Does that mean you better learn this? No, but you can if you want to. Does it mean this is too hard for you because it's so deep and so esoteric? No, because it's his Ruach. And as I said, if the Ruach HaKodesh can be interpreted as the Aleph Bet itself, the word, John 1:1, then the Ruach's job is to lead you into the truth. So the Samik represents the ordered arrangement of his stuff. Just so you know what we're dealing with. It's translated simply as secret, as counsel, or as mystery. Just so you know, the word paleo, or Pele, is either Pe Lamed Aleph. You can look in the dictionary. It's the exact same meaning as Pe Lamed He, or Pe Lamed Yod. It also means mystery, or secret, or hidden, or amazing, or astounding, or wonderful. And when Samson's father was talking to that one angel who said he was going to have a son, and he said, hey, what's your name? And he says, why do you ask? It's hidden. Or why do you ask? It's a secret. Or why do you ask? It's wonderful. He said, it's Pele. I think there's a yod at the end. Why do you ask? My name is Pele. And they've translated it and said, well, it can't be paleo. When you say it, you could even put a vav there. It's inferred. But that's Paleo. But one reason for calling this Paleo-Hebrew is because it's a hidden, secret mystery that's wonderful, astounding, marvelous. It's a synonym with this word sod, the ordered arrangement of Yahweh's family secrets. So if you look back in Jeremiah 23, hey, this is this stuff. So, Abraham. We were told that Abraham is the father of our faith. And it goes back to a certain verse where Yahweh said to Abraham, your descendants are you'll have all these descendants. But before that, Abraham was looking around and says, I got no descendants. I'm getting pretty old. When I die, maybe I should just leave all my stuff to my servant. But he's a Syrian. He's a Syrian, wasn't a Syrian. But the point is, he's not even one of my countrymen, but that's all I got. And Yahweh says, hey, come here for a minute. Take a look. See those stars? Like up here, man, these are brilliant stars. You don't get that in L.A. You even forget that there's stars there in some cities, literally. But he says, see those stars? Your descendants are going to be like the stars. Count the stars. If you are able, so shall your descendants be. Now, because at the Peshat level, we read those words and we say, nobody can count the stars. Well, if I paid you so you didn't have anything else to do for a few years, you could photograph, blow it up so they're really bright, and you could say, boy, some stars are so fuzzy, I can't really, do those count? But if I paid you so you could concentrate, maybe you could count the brightest stars. But I've heard said that now with these telescopes, they look into the areas that look pitch black dark, and they blow them up, and there's more stars there than even the ones you can see, and it's like, ugh. Okay, we can't count the stars. So that means, because Abraham is a model of our faith, that to have faith like Abraham, we really don't have to do what he said, because it's impossible. So because, I'm trying to show you the allegorical from the Peshat. The Peshat level, Yahweh says, count the stars if you are able. And because Abraham was unable, and he's the model, the father, the patron of our faith, so we are unable to do what Yahweh said, but Abraham believed, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. Look at all the translations, that's what it says. So, our faith is the nature similarly as Abraham. Until you look at Hebrew. And then it changes everything. What's it say? I could look at that, but I'm going to get to Melchizedek just because there was a request to talk about Melchizedek, because we've been talking about Melchizedek, and it's like, how do you be Melchizedek? Well, Abraham met up with Melchizedek. And Moshe, as Charlene was saying, was the last Melchizedek priest. So we're going to look at what does it mean to be Melchizedek. But it ties in with this, because I'm going to show you a couple things about Abraham. It says, count the stars if you are able. Well, the word for count is sefer. Can't read this. Sefer the stars. Samik, Pei, Resh. Sefer. S-E-F-E-R is the phonetic, or S-E-P-H-E-R. Remember? I usually write S-F-R, which is my email, because it's Samik, which is an F, Pei or Fei, which is an F, and R. So it's Sefer. It's translated as book or scroll. But it also means, it's where we get the word cipher or decipher or to code or encode or to hide in a code. It's all the same word. You can see in the dictionary, Sefer the stars. If, Aleph Mem, you are able, and so it will be reckoned to you. Well, he couldn't, because if this just means if, well, what if not? He can't, so he can't. So we don't, because it tells us later in the New Testament that Abraham was the model of our faith. Wait a minute, but the word sefer isn't just count. You look in the dictionary, and it also means to narrate, tell a story. Well, that's the Peshat level. Tell a story. Tell a story in the stars if you're able. How do you do that? Connect the dots. Sefer is also a boundary. How do you establish a boundary? If you're a kingdom, you'll come out to a certain extent. Here's your capital. You come out to a certain extent where you think you can patrol it with your soldiers, and you set up forts. And then you set up this invisible perimeter line. Now, if you had a ranch and you put your house down here, you might set up fence posts and connect them with fence wire. You've established a perimeter. It also is the same word as a barber. A barber, what's a barber do? A barber cuts hair and gives it a shape. You take something that has no shape and you give it a shape. When you tell a story, what are you doing? There's bears in the woods, you know. So you might have blonde hair. Let me tell you a story about Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I take some elements and now I'm going to create a story. That's narrating. There's a bear in the woods and there's a girl with blonde hair. Now I'm going to weave them together and tell a story. It's all Sephering. Abraham, count the stars. Nope, can't do it. Okay, that's a model of faith. Wait a minute. Abraham, connect the dots like stars in the sky and tell a story. You know, that sounds like constellations. The Mazarot. Abraham was told to design the Mazarot. Now, either there were no Mazarot before and Abraham came up with them, or as the book of Enoch said, maybe there was some remnant of that, but Abraham was then told to connect them somehow and tell a story. Now, this word if also means on condition or conditional to. In other words, in reference to, in specific reference to, Yahweh will then take it into consideration to express zadikah. Zadi, dalet, kuf, hey. There might be a yod in here. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the text. But the point is, if this is righteous, this is righteousness. So on the condition or accordingly to what Abraham comes up with when he's sephering the stars, Yahweh will reckon it or take it into consideration. In other words, because of what Abraham did, Yahweh will take what he did and work it out in Abraham's family extended lineage to manifest Zadikah. Now, this isn't just righteousness, the way it's translated. It's also victory, deliverance, and salvation. So if Abraham figures the constellations, then Yahweh's going to see to it that the Savior, the one who brings deliverance, is going to match the story that Abraham came up with in the stars. Interestingly enough, Abraham lived approximately 2000 BC, and the oldest record of anywhere that I've ever heard, researching this a little bit, that anybody can find an actual planetarium of the stars having objects in them goes back to a place in Dendera, Egypt, which is approximately 2000 BC. And whether Abraham visited the Pharaoh, talked to him about this stuff, and they made a planetarium, or whether, let's see, you got Isaac and then Jacob and then Joseph, who, guess what, had a vision of the stars, and he moved to Egypt and had this thing going, and maybe Joseph built this planetarium somewhere back there around 2000 BC. You know, a few centuries get lost. Joseph might have been the guy to design that planetarium. But if we think, oh no, those are just Greek and Roman gods or Egyptian deities, it's gotten lost. But Abraham was specifically told to sepher the stars. And then this big word, if. The interesting thing, when I told you about the word truth, the first day, Aleph Mem Tav, is mother. Mem is womb. Aleph like I am or I will, like the ox set in motion, or an arrow saying, this is the thing I'm going to do. I will be born of a mother, and Mem Tav means die, dead, corpse, dead body. I will be born of a mother and die. That's the truth. Who is the I am? The guy who built the alphabet, which is Yahweh. So the word Em or Emma is the word mother. So you could say, what does a mother do? To necessarily say, well, Abraham can't count the stars, so he didn't do anything. That's not reading Hebrew. Maybe on the Peshat level, it's reading what you think is the proper translation. And metaphorically, allegorically, the next level down, and then the next level down, Drosh, you can invent doctrines that says, I don't have to do anything Yahweh says because it's impossible based on what he told Abraham. You get down to the Sod level and you realize, It's saying the exact opposite. The same way as a pregnant mother better eat the right thing, better not go snowboarding where she might fall down and bust up the child within her, so as that mother nurtures and cares for the seed that's implanted, she's been entrusted by her husband to tend that seed. So Yahweh planted his Torah within us and entrusts us as his woman, Israel, the woman of Yahweh, to tend that seed and bring it back and say, here, see what I've given you? It's like Yeshua talking about the 3 servants who are given different amounts, and they were entrusted, and one says, here, I buried it in the earth, here, you can have it back. And the other one was given 3, here, I gave you 3 more, or 5, or 1, or 2 different stories. The point is, here, you gave this to me, I nurtured and tended it, and I give you the increase. That's a picture of the woman doing this. It's a picture of Abraham being entrusted with information and mental acuity, ability, intelligence, and saying, you better do something with this, because your ancestors, other way, your progeny will be like that. Now, Abraham wanted one thing in life. He had a lot of stuff, but he craved something. What was it? Family, offspring, a son. His whole life was like, well, what's the big deal? He's got camels, he's got flocks, he's got servants, but I don't have a son. I don't have a family. Do you think he's going to say, oh, count the stars and my family will be like that? Okay, whatever. I would be willing to bet Abraham never slept another night. He probably slept during the day, put up a tent, and got where he could fall asleep, because he was probably up all night studying those stars year after year after year, knowing that by his diligence to be accurate and come up with this story, that would be the story of his family. Which is to say, for us to sefer the stars, study the stars, and try to figure out what Abraham said, not what the Greeks and Romans and Egyptians said, but what Abraham came up with is not astrology, and it's not paganism. It's Yahwehism. Because we're looking back at our family ancestry in a whole different way. Just so you know, there's a fellow by the name of John Dilday. Just met up with him in Idaho, and for the past couple of years we've been working on doing this project of looking at the 150 brightest stars and looking at their names and interpreting them into Hebrew phonetics and trying to recalibrate what the constellations ought to be. But we're both a little distracted, and he just got married, and but that's on the table, boy, a front burner, but you know how that goes. Anyway, we're trying to do this because we're trying to sefer what Abraham sefered. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it said Abraham believed and it was reckoned to him for righteousness. Oh, Abraham believed, but he didn't do anything. No, Abraham did do something. He sefered the stars as he was told, but it says he simply believed. Well, what he did was amunah, which is the word Shiloh brought up. Aleph, Mem, Nun, Hey, amunah. Or another way to write the word, which might be in the text, I'd have to look up to tell you exactly, is Hey, Aleph, Mem, Nun. But I'm trying to show you how the word works. Hey, remember, a window, it means it's to express. So here you have a window, and here's the light shining through the window. You see that? This means the. The word hine, which is behold, is hey, nun, hey. Nun is this action. Behold, lo, to be gladdened. The English word Hannah, like a girl's name. Zion, hey, means this. So hey is, remember, Zion is to specify something. It's number 7, and you'll 7 on display, on something on display. Which book? The book. Sit there. It's pointing. Okay, so what I'm saying is that the letter hey basically is pointing at the word in the middle. So amunah, hamanah, let's get rid of the hey for a moment. Aleph, Mem, Nun. Does anybody know what English word Aleph, Mem, Nun is? Think for a minute. What English word lines up with this word? Huh? What's an Aleph in English? A. What's the Mem in English? M. And what's the Nun in English? And you're reading it this direction. Amen. Now, does anybody know what amen literally means? Yes. Agree. It shall be so. Or as I've heard it, so be it. Absolutely. Amen. In agreement. Now, if you look in the dictionary here, Aleph Mem Nun, just for the record, page 35. To be firm, like Jell-O, is not liquid. Do you see Jell-O here? Okay, start thinking of concepts. I'll read you a number of things. To be firm or trustworthy, strong, enduring, true, lasting, eternal, confidence, faith, fixed on a place, nursed, fostered, brought up, found firm, found to be trustworthy, found to be true. If you find it to be true, what Edgar's doing? Searching and searching and searching and searching, looking for something that's solid. It's not just, oh, I bumped my foot, that must be solid. It's diligent work, which is why I'm saying for Abraham to be Amunah, didn't just believe. He must have laid awake at night staring at the stars, and he was found to be trustworthy, that Yahweh could have confidence in him because he was entrusted with something and he used it, he did it, he applied it. He sephered those stars every single night. Maybe not on Shabbat, maybe he took a break. But that was his job, that was his work. He trained himself. He believed and he trusted. He was confirmed and accredited. That's what you get when you go to college and pass the exams after 4 years. You're accredited, confirmed. It means Aleph Mem Nun, faithfulness, truth, amen, so be it, truly, certainly, strong, enduring, trust. It's also the word for artist, master, and workman. It's not the apprentice. It's not the novice. It's not the kid twiddling his thumbs playing video games. It's someone that you, like you were just telling me, your daughter, she goes there to apply for a job and they're going to train her, and they realize that this girl knows how to work because her mother taught her how to work. How to work is an attitude, though she didn't know that job, because she had an aptitude and attitude because she was trained how to work and a mind of diligence. Instantly, her employer trusted her and said, go to it. Check with me if you've got any problems. Because she knew the character and nature on the inside was expressed on the outside. This is what Abraham did. Even if he didn't know that thing that he was entrusted to do, he was the person who had that within him, who Yahweh knew that he could trust to do it right, with diligence, with intellect, with aptitude. Artist, master workman, not just the laborer. Craftsman, artisan, specialist. Aleph Mem Nun, specialist. A related word has a hey at the end. Aleph Mem Nun hey means a pilaster, column, or a post. Now, Samson was put between a couple posts that were holding up the entire temple, and when he pushed it, the entire temple fell down. That's what this is referring to. This post right here, you touch it and it moves. That's a fake post. It's not really doing anything. That's not Aleph Mem Nun. That's an illusion. So if we said Aleph Mem, if, or on the condition of you doing what he said, if you look like you're holding something up and you're not, then it will be reckoned unto you accordingly. With the measure you use, it's measured to you. Abraham was diligent. Man, he was going to do this to the epitome, as they say, the nth degree. He was going to make sure if there was anybody on the planet ever that knew those stars, it was going to be him. And according to that measure, it was no facade, no fake post. Oh, He just believed and didn't have to do anything, slept all night. I disagree with that. So therefore, what I'm saying is that if at the Peshat level and the allegorical level and the Drode level of let's determine some doctrines by what Abraham did, these guys have got it all wrong. Why? Because they don't know Hebrew? They don't know what this word amen actually means? Is that a family secret? Is that Sod level? So be it. You guys are learning Sod level then. Have at it. Pilaster, column, post, education. Same word. Also covenant, pact, trust, credit. The covenant that Yahweh had with Abraham, what was it? Oh, you get the land. What did Abraham do? Nothing. No, Abraham was told to sever the stars. That was his part of the covenant. Then you can add other prefixes and suffixes. Verily, truly, indeed. Wait a minute. Verily. Oh, because I read the New Testament, King James, I remember every time Yeshua said, verily, verily, I say unto you. That's this word. This is trustworthy. Count on it. Bank on it. Invest all your stock options into this being actual. That's what he's saying. And so something about the message in the stars is just that valid. But as soon as they wrap it up with astrology, oh, that don't even look at that. Boy, they know how to make it so we miss out on stuff, I'll tell you. Anyway, the more we look at this word with different prefixes and suffixes, which I'll leave that to you, that's this word. You don't even want to look at it. Every subject. I'm just trying to show you what's in some of these words. Now, there's this other word. Let me mention one other thing here that you'll never see in an English Bible. Numbers 10, 35, and 36. I'm going to jump over 3 different subjects here. That was the first one. And what I'm doing here, just so you know, I showed you the letters. It's like numbers. I showed you how to spell words and how to take the words and turn them into things like we just did. And so we're trying to look at how do you do mathematics? Why are some people mathematicians? They actually find this stuff fun. So I'm trying to show you some fun stuff with the letters in the words. Numbers 10, 35, and 36. Now, in English it says this, and we were just talking about this this morning, I believe. When the ark would journey, this is all talking about the ark picking up and moving, right? In the 42 campsites. When the ark would journey, Moshe said, now why would Moses say this? I'm going to read it in a moment. It's like, man, we have to have some pageantry. They saw the pillar of fire, get up and start moving. It's like, whoa, hey, quick. And remember, as she said, they didn't know whether that pillar of fire was going to sit there 1 day or 2 days or a year. But everybody wake up in the morning, is that pillar moving yet? Okay, so if it started moving, Moses might have said, okay, everybody, let's round them up. Round up the wagon. Let's go. Load them up. We got to follow this cloud. Moses didn't say that. Moses got out in front and says, man, if I'm the boss, I got to look like a boss. So I'm going to get out in front and make a proclamation. Arise, Yahweh! Is that what he's doing here? I think there's something else going on. You see, it's been said the rabbis, again, I don't listen to the rabbis. I've never sat under a rabbi, but I've heard it said the rabbis say these 2 verses are more important than any 2 verses in this entire book. As a matter of fact, they say that these 2 verses are equal in weight or merit than any entire book of the Torah. You could look at the entire book of Genesis and say, these 2 verses are that important. You could take Numbers, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. Of course, this is in Numbers. But these 2 verses are more important than all 3 of those books put together because those books are thrown out by the church. So as a matter of fact, there's 5 books of Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's 5. But I thought 7 was the perfect number. So what some people do is they say, these two verses are equal to a book. So that's another book, which means the front half of Numbers is one book, and the second half after this is another book. That gives you 7. That's a perfect number. That's how they rationalize or reason. It's okay. They're just playing with blocks, right? These two verses are that important? Who would have known? In the English Bible, you wouldn't have known because it's just Peshat level narrative. When the ark would journey, Moshe said, "Arise, Yahweh, and let your foes be scattered. Let those who hate you flee from before you." What's the big deal? Why is that so important? And then the next verse. And when it rested, when the cloud stopped and the ark was settled down, Moshe would say, "Reside tranquilly, O Yahweh, among the myriad thousands of Israel." Moses gets out in front, raises up his hands, and speaks to Yahweh. "Rise up, Yahweh." He had already risen up. What is Moses just being theatrical here? If these are the most important 2 verses in the Bible, what's going on? Well, here, let me show you something. You'll never see this in the English Bible. See these? I don't know if you can see, but in modern Hebrew, it's called an inverted nun. So a modern regular nun is shaped like that. If you flip that upside down, it's going to be shaped like that. So what they do is they make a space, and then they write the 2 verses, and then they write another inverted nun, and then they follow the text again. So it separates it off from the rest. And this is called the inverted nuns. A fellow by the name of Monty Judah, who's down in Oklahoma, Lion and Lamb Ministries, did a whole talk on the jots and tittles. We're told, from the Christian perspective, that the jots and tittles, well, jot, J-O-T, is really a Y-O-D, you see the blended phonetics, which is actually the smallest little Hebrew letter, which is this little thing. Of course, the yod in Paleo, yod, is just as big as all the other letters. And the tittles, he says, when you have, like here's the letter bet, modern Hebrew, they have this little flame flourish on the top. Or sometimes they have these other things, which are these little marks that are little crownlets that they put on them. He says, well, people think, oh, those are the tittles. Like, tiddly, ooh, that same type of word. But Monty Judah says, no, that's not true. Jots and tittles are not that. They're anomalies in the text. And this is one of them. The inverted nuns. Another one is the fact that the first letter in the entire Bible, the entire Torah, is this enlarged letter bet. And we might think, oh, that's just because it's the first letter. And it's like, no, it means something. When Jacob met Esau and Esau fell out on his neck to kiss him, there's dots above the word. The rabbis say, well, why are those dots there? We don't know, but it's probably a picture that Esau wanted to bite his neck instead of kissing him. However, there's another word with the dots above it. Deuteronomy 29:28 says, all the words of this Torah are for us and our children to do them forever. The words lenu ve'labenu, for us and our children, have dots above it. What does that mean? That's a whole other study. I think it has to do with John 3 with Nicodemus. We could talk about that if you want, maybe tomorrow. But I'm just saying that the rabbis don't necessarily know what these inverted letters or enlarged letters or reduced letters or dots, they don't necessarily know. They might have some good ideas, but why am I bringing this to your attention? Just for what it's worth, I try to look at some of these things and make little graphics. One of the graphics, if you look on my website, is this inverted nun thing. It says Kuma, Yodevavhe, and Shuva. Kuma and Shuva. Those are the 2 active verbs. Why I made this is just this little graphic as a reminder to say, why is this so important? Made it look like a military insignia patch, like a soldier might wear. Boy Scouts had patches I thought were pretty cool. Had some of these patches made. But the point about that is to say this. Why is that so important? Kuma, the letter kuf, remember, means arise. It also means come back. To dig a hole and plant a pillar so it's solid, like education and training. Abraham, to have emunah, had to be a skilled artisan, found faithful. That's to be planted and firm. That's the same word as rise up. To be planted down and rising up, to be found steadfast, is that word kuma. And when Moshe said to Yahweh, arise, Yahweh, let your enemies flee from before your face, and scattered. Yahweh said before, our covenant relationship is reciprocal. With the measure we use, it'll be measured to us. If we don't listen to his words, he won't listen to our words. If we act towards him with a casual disregard, whatever, then he's going to listen to our prayers with a casual disregard, whatever. And if we find ourselves, because of our educational study, emunah, to be planted and firm, rising up, yes, Yahweh is my Elohim, then he will stand as the pillar of fire and scatter his enemies, which are our enemies, because we're found in him. It's a reciprocal. So drawing this picture as these inverted noons reciprocal, these are modern. These are the paleo. Someone said, oh, that's a bad picture because it looks like the SS, the Nazi Gestapo. And it's like, if Israel had done this, the Nazi Gestapo would be flat on their face before Yahuwah. They would have never gotten off the ground. Why did they get so powerful? Because Israel refused to kuma. There's this word shuvah. What, excuse me? Kuma? Arise, stand, be planted. Stand up and do what he said. Have faith and confidence in him. Remember I said yesterday, Judah had faith in Yahweh, so they conquered the giants of the mountains. They saw the iron chariots, and their hearts melted, drained out their strength, and so Yahweh couldn't help them. It's a reciprocal, dynamic relationship. If we're taught that Abraham did nothing but believe, Yahweh will do nothing except believe. But because Abraham did, he sephered the stars. He did what Yahweh said. He woke up in the middle of the night, stared at the stars, and sephered them. So too, it's a reciprocal nature. If we do what Yahweh says, then Yahweh himself will do what he says. It's dependent on us. Now, I know some people who have criticized this for saying, no, it has nothing to do with us. It's all the blood of Jesus. Sorry, that's not what this word says. The definitions of these words in Hebrew do not agree with that doctrine. So you look at the 4 levels of interpretation, and at the drosh level, where they make up doctrines based on what they understand because of the way they perceive, if they do not know the level of the family secrets, why did Moses say these words? Because Moses understood. What do these words mean? It's the backbone. This side equals that side of the samach, of the menorah. It's a mirror image. Our faith and confidence in him will be mirrored by the way he responds to us. That's not Christian doctrine. Doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean I'm right. Go check it out for yourself. Read scripture and find out whether I'm telling you is true. Now, what about shuvah? Shuv is return, Yahweh. Abide amidst the myriad thousands of Israel. That's the way it's translated. So Moses, the ark had already settled down. Why is Moses going out and making this proclamation? Because there's something about our words. Remember what he said to Ezekiel? Speak, make it so. Speak to these bones to come back together. There's something about our words. And for Moshe to proclaim the words somehow is aligning the molecules in the universe to happen and make it so. Because Yahweh had an intention and spoke and it was so. And then he says, speak so that my will happen. Oh, gee, that's not Christian doctrine either. But remember what Yeshua said? Say to this mountain, be moved and cast into the sea, and it'll be so. Just don't doubt in your heart. Gee, we cast out the demons and they didn't cast out. Why? Oh, ye of little faith? There's something about our emunah and our words in alignment with Yahuwah's will, his aleph, which will make it manifest. Sorry, that's not our doctrine. Okay, then never mind. Go watch TV. Figure out whether this is true. Read the words. Remember I said, if you have certain spectacles, from a Christian point of view, you'll see the Bible from a Christian point of view. If you look from a rabbinical Jewish point of view, you'll see it from a rabbinical Jewish point of view. If you see it with a witchcraft and sorcery point of view, they know the Bible, they read it, and they see what gives them power. I'm trying to say, look at it with, I will choose to call it a Sod, Yahweh's structured alphabet, the way he arranged it point of view, because he arranged the alphabet. Look at it with that point of view and see what you see. I'm just trying to show you another way to see it. You have to figure out whether it's true. The word shuv means return. It's the old man who comes back around the sun again. Shin Bet. It's where we get the word teshuvah, which means come back and sit. It's where we get Shabbat. Come back to where your house is and sit. Abide tranquilly. Another way to read this text is abide tranquilly amidst the myriad thousands. The word ravavot is tens of thousands, but the word rabbi is a great one. The word aleph used here, that's like the ox. The myriad thousands is ravavot alfun. But the other way you could read that, ravavot alfun Israel, is Yahweh, will you please return the high regard of Israel to where it is the aleph. It is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is the people at the pinnacle, the aleph of all their potential. Yahweh, will you please return the status of your people? Why? Because we sit when you said to sit. We sit and stop working at the Moedim on Yom HaShabbat. Whether we have the right day or not, that's what we're trying to figure out. But I'm not going to kick anybody around because they're trying to figure out the calendar and they have a different of opinion. The heart is to do what Yahweh said. We are teshuvah-ing. There's a beautiful song called Teshuvah, which we might want to play. Zaslav, I think, is her last name. We might want to play it later. Beautiful if you have a heart to hear the words. We should hear this. We'll pull it up. The point is, if we want Yahweh to sit and encamp with us, we need to sit down. When he said to sit, he says, I will meet with you. The word sheken, mishkan, shekinah, means to sit in neighbor. The Mishkan, otherwise known as the tabernacle, the letter B is the same as V. In Greek is taverno, tavern, the local neighborhood watering hole, where you sit and eat and drink with your neighbors, shoot pool, whatever. That same word, tavern, tabernacle, taverno, Mishkan, Shekinah, it's all the same word. Yahweh abiding with his people, sitting down, hanging out with them and talking. That's what Shabbat is for. So for Moshe to say, Yahweh, please sit with us, it's a reciprocal dynamic for us to sit with him when he said to, when he said he would. So this little picture that I drew is just this reminder of saying, oh, you want to be Yahweh's military forces? His Zavot, Yahweh's Zavot, Yahweh Master of Legions, his military forces better do what he said because he's the commanding officer. So the word Zion, we talked about this the other day. I'm just trying to go through a little bit of a rehash with you. The word Zion, Zadi, Yod, Vav, Nun. The Zadi is the sprout like a scepter. Yod means my, so this is my command. So the word literally spelled Zadi, Vav is precept. Do what he said. Vav Nun, the one who is in the act of doing what he said, fervently. Shabbat, Shabbaton, when you rest, you really rest. Same concept, do what he said. So one who is doing what he really said, with that scepter of righteousness, that Zadik is Zion, you're his military forces. We have a military man in here. Gee, what would happen if you didn't do what your commanding officer said? Any clue? Can you give us any insights, us who aren't military people? You're taken out of commission, court-martialed, demoted, charged, thrown in the brink, kicked out. There's a verse that says, it's in Psalms, it says, your people volunteer on the day you go out to battle because, why? It's not the draft. They say, we know you're going to win. We know you're going to loot and pillage and take spoils, and we want to be part of it. Hey, can I be part of your army? Can I really? Only if you do what I say. Oh, no, we don't have to do anything. We're just believing. That's Christian doctrine. I'm just trying to read the words. Do what he said. Oh, well, we can't. It's too hard. Oh, no, his Ruach will empower you. His Ruach will make possible in each one of you and each one of us exactly his commission, exactly his Zadi Yod. He will give it to us. Because after all, it says another place in Scripture that Israel is Yahweh's inheritance. Oh, we look forward to being with him in the by and by. He's our inheritance. If he doesn't have Israel, he's got nobody. And if we look back through history, there's Israel that, well, look back at the beginning. Let's just take a quick overview of history. He made Adam and Eve. Boom, they failed. Okay, Cain and Abel, the next generation. Boom, there's a murderer. He gives them a spread of maybe 1,000 years or so, another 1,500 years, and it was so bad that he saves 8 people and destroys everything else. And then, Enoch knew what was going on, and he had favor with Noah. But then, a few years later, you got Nimrod in the Tower of Babel. So he finds Abraham, one guy, and says, hey, I'll develop you. And he starts to develop him, and Abraham has some struggles, but it takes a couple hundred years later. Finally, he's got the 12 tribes, and they get sucked into Egyptian idolatry, and they completely lose it. They think of themselves as Egyptians. That's another part of the story that you don't normally hear. But finally, he brings Moses and pulls them out, millions strong, actually probably close to 3 million people think. And then he wants to wipe them out again. Step back, Moses. I'm going to kill them all and rise up a new nation out of you. We failed him all the way along up until Moses. Moses intercedes and pleads, and he says, okay, but that whole generation dies in the desert. And then he finally brings them into the promised land with Joshua and Judges, and they can't believe him. They doubt, they fail. They don't wipe out the Canaanites. They start worshiping other gods. And the entire rest of the Bible, all the way up until David has a heart, and he brings the nation together, but his own son Solomon throws the gods to his people. Jeroboam sets up Dan and Bethel, completely flips out. Yahweh has to destroy the entire nation again. Brings them back with Nehemiah and Ezra. Crash and burn. Yeshua comes. Wow, we got Yeshua. He gives us the Ruach HaKodesh. And within a century or two, we got the Roman Church. Doctrines for the next 2,000 years. Where's Yahweh's people? Where's the people who will listen to him, do what he said, planted with emunah, trusting him with confidence to live up to his covenant? Has he ever had it yet? Ever. On the face of the earth, has he ever had a people yet to not turn to sorcery, divination, doctrines, denominations of spurious churches and twisted this and that? Ever has he had it? Really? This is the clean bride? He's coming back? I was told as a kid, he could come back every day. Every prophecy is fulfilled. No, it's not. Is there a clean bride? Robes of righteousness without a wrinkle? No. Is there a menorah lit? No. There's an unlit shape of a menorah. Where's his people doing what he said? Where's his people that have confidence in their heart? Like a lit menorah, trusting every word to be true? Not there. Is there a people that will kuma? Is there a people who will shuva? Where is it? I haven't seen it all through history. Maybe one here, there. Maybe somebody has a doctrine here, there. Where's his people? Am Israel Chai. People of Israel live. Ezekiel 37. Valley of dry bones. Rise up. Get back together. Has it happened yet? No. Well, then this isn't the end of the world. Do we have 1,000 years? You can scour the scriptures and find prophecies that when he brings his people back. Charlene, yesterday you read a verse. Where was that? Do you remember at the end of the meeting yesterday?
What was the verse?
Isaiah what? Remember, you read it. What was the? Isaiah 2. Jeremiah 2. There's plenty. Maybe you should read it again. There's plenty of other verses that sound just like this. And I haven't seen it ever happen. There's places where he said, I'll kind of paraphrase. I'll paraphrase. He says what's now a garden will become, what's now a desert will become a garden. What's now a garden will become like a thick jungle. Yahweh will cause the land to regrow. Hasn't happened. Go to Israel, you'll see. And it even prophesies people from the nations will come back to the land. Hey, you can take a plane and go there. Cost you a couple $1,000, but you can go visit Israel and look. It hasn't regrown. And the people say, why did Yahweh do this? He said that he gave Israel pristine garden. He says it was the best place on the face of the earth. So you watch movies about David and King Saul and all that, and they're out in the desert, and they're all running around in the rocks. That's not what it looked like. You see, the curse came after David. The Romans came and salted the place. Yahweh changed the weather and destroyed his heritage, which is that land, well, and his people. Why? Because his people profaned the covenant, acted treacherously, betrayed him. And so what we see when we see movies of David and Saul running around in the rocks, it was a jungle. It hasn't become that, which means this can't be the end of the world, because there's all kinds of prophecies that hasn't happened yet. Yahweh, if he has to shift the earth on its axis, if he has to flip the poles, if he has to send in planet Nibiru or some other thing, he's going to do what he said, and you can count on it. That's Aleph Mem Nun. That's Aleph Mem Tav. That's Yahweh planned, and he's going to do it. So I cannot believe any longer that this is the end of the world. And he talks about numerous generations. How many? So I'm suggesting maybe there's 1,000 years in front of us. If we think, oh no, he's going to come any second, you're going to live your life and conduct it a certain way. If you think, hey, there's 1,000 years, oh man, I got to live another decade like this. Hey, his words restore health. His words will restore the water, the air, the land, the genetically modified organisms, plants. Yahweh can change that. He can knock out the giants. You think those giants up there conducting all their satanic ceremonies with their false gods, the Baals, the Molechs, the whoever's, the Dagons, you think they didn't pollute the land? Of course they polluted the land. He said, if you do these things, the land itself will spew you out. The land was spewing them out, and he sent his people to clean up. You think Yahweh was going to send his people in the land of Canaan and then have to live in the midst of the vomit of the land? No, Yahweh was going to cleanse the land. Just his presence cleansed the land. And we heard about that, right? Filtering through sand and his words and water and all. It reconditions. Yahweh's word will recondition the earth. We don't have to be afraid of Monsanto and those chemtrail guys. That's not the ultimate Elohim. We are, by our words, by our emunah in our heart. We can change this face of this planet. Of course, I know people that say I'm nuts, but I'm just reading the words. When Yahweh restores his people, the earth is restored. If they can convince us that it won't happen, then it won't happen, because it's a reciprocal relationship. We want Yahweh to stand up and chase the enemies away. We need to stand on what he said and sit down. He said, I told you in quietness and rest was your strength, but you said, no, we won't have it. We're going to run on fast horses. Very well, you will run, as you say, on fast horses. That's a big military budget. But I'm going to give your enemies faster horses. I'm going to give them more trickier weapons. Great. It's like, hey, man, I'm glad on this side. I know in a heartbeat the side that I was born into can turn and become my enemy. Don't mistake that for a moment. I can't take any confidence and peace and rest knowing that I'm on this side of the world table as it turns. Anyway, all I'm saying is we have to trust in Yahweh, and we have to believe that his word can turn things around. I mean, look, he sent the 10 plagues. You don't think he can clean up the oil spill? You don't think he can purify the air? Of course he can. So why am I talking about all this stuff? I'm talking to you about what it means to Kuma Shuva, that's at the heart at what it means to be Yahweh's people. Now let's look at Psalms 110. There's 3 places in Scripture where Melchizedek is mentioned. There's Abraham. Now remember, Abraham just came back from whipping a few other soldiers. Abraham heard that his nephew, who, even though Lot was a bit of a jerk, he was still Abraham's nephew. And he heard that Sodom, Gomorrah, and all these other cities had been raided, and these guys took off. So Abraham said, look, I've got 300 friends, 300 guys in my employment. There might be 24 of those enemy soldiers. I think our 300 can take those 24 enemy soldiers. No. Read the book of Yashar. Now, whether you can believe the book of Yashar, I think it said there was 80,000. 80,000 80,000 enemy soldiers and 5 kings. And Abraham with his 300 guys is going to take them on. 80,000. Is that true? That's the book of Yashar. Whatever. Abraham didn't count the numbers. He just said, Yahweh is my Elohim. Let's go take care of business. And he slaughtered them. The book of Yashar says one little group of youths hopped on the camels and split and took off. Other than that, Abraham and his 300 guys slaughtered the 5 kings and all their guys. That's pretty tough. Abraham was a tough guy. Abraham knew Yahuwah. And when he came back from that slaughter, he meets up with Melchizedek. Melchizedek was a priest, it says of Salem, and people say, well, that was probably Jerusalem, whatever. But he was a priest of El Elyon, the Most High. But Melchizedek noticed in Abraham, he says, you weren't just an ancient Arnold Schwarzenegger who lifted a lot of weights. El Elyon is with you. Well, Abraham regarded El Shaddai. There's another verse that we were looking at yesterday where Yahweh says, by my name Yahweh, I did not reveal myself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But another translation said, by my name Yodevavhe, was I not known to them? Of course I was. So the same verse is either a question or a statement. Either he did or he didn't, and we can't tell. Nevertheless, my point is, though one called him El Elyon, the other one called him El Shaddai, they both recognized a kinship of Amunah in their heart. This one being priest, this one, see, we think of king, the guy with the crown, and he gets to eat at the big table and got all the girls. In the ancient culture, the king was the guy who went out in front with his weapon, and he was engaged in the battle. You know, in our countries now, the king is the guy who sits in the back and pushes numbers and tells his other guys to do stuff, and the soldiers have to go out and do it. But the king in those days was the guy who went out and took care of business. So here you have an example of Abraham as a king and Melchizedek as a priest, and they engage each other and go, yeah, we know the right guy together. We have fellowship together. And Melchizedek broke with him bread and wine. What was going on there? Now, the other place Melchizedek is mentioned, that's all it tells us of Melchizedek, no other mention. Hebrews talks about Melchizedek, and it talks about this thing called the order of Melchizedek. And then Hebrews 7 and 8 elaborate on that, and Charlene has talked about that, and Matthew Nolan has talked about that, order of the tribes. But it invokes a mention back in Psalms 110. So let's look at what Psalms 110, because this is the only other thing we know about Melchizedek. So, I'm going to read through here and tell you a little bit. This version says, regarding David, this is a psalm. Okay, if this is regarding David, then it's written by one of David's men, or maybe even a young lady, I don't know. Somebody, a poet, a songwriter, somebody else wrote Psalms 110 about David. Now, could somebody else read that first line in your version, whatever it is? What? A psalm of David. What does that mean? Huh?
He would have written it.
That David wrote it. It might even say in some translation a psalm by David. Now there's two different things. Did David write this psalm, or is this psalm written by somebody else concerning who David is, and he's now going to describe the favor of Yahweh on David or about David? He's going to now be describing David. Or is this David describing somebody else, David himself being the songwriter? We're just talking about the first letter of the first word, and already we have a big problem. If I look at it in Hebrew, it says, Lamed Dalet Vav Dalet. One letter. Does it mean by, of, for? Well, yes, the letter Lamed means all that stuff. So already we can't tell the proper translation. We don't even know what this is about now. But let me go on. The word of Yahweh said to my master, wait at my right. The word wait is shin bet, shuv, which is otherwise translated sit. We talked about shuva. That's the same word, sit. Why does it say wait? On Shabbat, that's the same word. Shin bet tav. Tav is tense, either future or past. Shabbat means wait? I thought Shabbat was the day you rest. Why didn't he say rest or sit? But this says wait. Already we have another problem. Who do I trust? Do I trust the King James authors? Do I trust the ISR translation? Do I trust... Don't the Jews know how to translate their own words? Already there's another problem. But let me read. The word of Yahweh said to my master. This says, in King James, I believe it says, the Lord said to my Lord. Okay, if it says the Lord said to my Lord, okay, you shake your head. What does that mean? All your life or whenever, what have you learned that sentence means? When he says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Tell me the picture. That's the Peshat. What's the next level? What do you see?
I have been told that means God says to one of David's descendants, that may imply that he's Yeshua.
Okay.
That's what I've always been told.
If you read this verse with that translation, then God is saying to Jesus, the Father says to the Son, the big Lord says to the minor Lord, sit at my right at a throne in heaven of some sort until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Wait at my right until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. That's verse, here it says that's verse 1, but there's other, just so you know, Stones Tanakh and the KJV has different number. Now, if I read this, the word of Yahweh to my master, it's regarding David. So now somebody in the employ of David, maybe it's the songwriter, or whoever this is, the choir master, says, Yahweh said about David, David, you wait at my right-hand side. Now the word right hand is Yemen, like the country Yemen. Apparently if you're facing Jerusalem from the Mediterranean, the right-hand side is the south, which is Yemen. So the country named Yemen, Y-E-M-N-E-N, that's a Hebrew word meaning right hand. It's also the position of power and strength. So for Yahweh to say to David, just wait, you're right at my position of strength and power. I'm going to use you as my right hand. You are at my right hand, and you will see the manifestation. Just wait. You will see it played out, that I will make all your enemies, David, a footstool under your feet. You will dominate them. Not just kill them, but they will serve you, which is actually what happened. But you see, it's a whole different story. Yes?
Another thing, isn't that says, and Yahweh said to Yahweh, sit on my right hand?
No, it doesn't say Yahweh said to Yahweh. That's what we're reading. What it says here in Hebrew is, La Dawid, Mizmor, Na'am Yahweh. Na'am Yahweh is translated usually the word of the Lord. But it says Na'am Yahweh is like the word of Yahweh unto Adonai. So when you see the Lord said to my Lord, the first Lord is capitalized because it's Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and the second Lord has a lowercase O-R-D because it's actually Adonai. So the question is, who's Adonai and who's Yahweh, who's the Lord and who's the Lord? And what I'm saying is, you can believe whatever you want. If you want to believe he's talking about Yeshua, go ahead. I'm not going to tell you no. But I'm trying to show you there's another way to read this, and if you look at it in Hebrew, the point of this is we're going to get to Melchizedek. I'm just trying to show you all of a sudden right out of the gate, we're stumbling and bumbling and trying to find our bearings.
And you're reading.
I'm just reading the Hebrew. I'm just showing you what it says, and I'm showing you the English translation. And I'm not trying to tell you, oh, believe Stones Tanakh and don't believe KJV. I'm not telling you that. I'm just trying to show you which one do you believe, because it's not just a matter of semantics. It's a whole different picture. Is he talking about David or is he talking about Yeshua? Okay, here, let me read on. Yahweh will dispatch the staff, that's like the scepter of righteousness, Zadi, or it's like the Lamed, the shepherd's staff of teaching and learning, of your strength from Zion. Well, if it's the staff of your strength, picturing the alphabet as the Lamed from Zion, the word Zadi Yod Nun means my commands. Well, the Lamed means a shepherd's staff of teaching my instructions, but the letter Zadi at the other end of the alphabet is like the Ark of the Covenant, the tables of stone, the scepter of righteousness, the rule and reign, like sitting on the throne. Yahweh sits on the throne, as it were, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. So I'm saying there's pictures you can get depending on how you appropriate this phrase, staff of strength. Either one of them might be valid, but I'm just, rule amid your enemies. So he's not killing the enemies. The enemies are still alive, but he's dominating his enemies. So if we think that Yeshua is going to come back and slaughter all his enemies, and the only people left is the kingdom of heaven, well, that can't be this, because all the enemies are still alive. So this isn't a matter of everybody do what I say and everybody else is dead. It's like, no, there's going to be people who are his enemies who don't like it, but he's going to have a dominant authority. So is this a picture of David? Well, David had a lot of trouble for a lot of years, and he ruled kind of amidst his enemies, but they were all circling like ravenous wolves. And even when Solomon took over, he ruled in peace, but because he entertained these other deities, Yahweh stirred up 3 enemies at his borders to constantly hound him. But this isn't a picture of the heavenly kingdom where there is no enemies and all Satan's followers are dead. That's not this picture. Your people, who's that? David's or is it Yeshua's? Your people volunteer on the day of your campaign. I just quoted this verse a few minutes ago. Why? Because of your majestic sanctity, from the inception of your reign, you retain the dew-like freshness of your youth. That means even if you're 100 years old, like Moshe, 120, didn't lose his eyesight, Joshua and Caleb were 80, and they still said, let's just go take those cities. Yahweh said, we will be victorious, we will be victorious. There's no question. There was some battles where not a single Israelite was killed. They just went out there, and Yahweh made the enemies all fall down. Why? Because he was with them. They took out Sihon, they took out Og, they took out Jericho, they took out the iron chariots. Woo-hoo! Let's join up. We're going to win. We are going to win. Yeah, but what about? No yeah buts. We are going to win. We will prevail. We are victorious. Goliath falls. Goliath's head rolls in the dirt. We, Yahweh's people, Am Israel Chai, Zadikah, victory, deliverance, and salvation. There is no question. Oh, unless we doubt in our heart, like Peter sinking in the waves. So we have to then, oh, silly Peter. I've heard so many sermons. Oh, that stupid Peter. Oh, Peter was so off the top. Well, yeah, Peter was a good model, that he was courageous, but he was also a loudmouth and kind of emotionally erratic. And it's like, why didn't the other 11 disciples get out of the boat? Yahweh has sworn and will not relent. Okay, what that's a picture of, the letter that means to swear is the Zion. That's 7. Shavah. Aleph. I'm going to set this in motion. The word that I set forth will not return void. It will accomplish that what I set it forth to do. So this, we have a picture of Aleph. We have a picture of Zion. And we have a picture of the Zadi, the sprout. He has sworn, boom, and it will not relent. It'll happen. Boom, that's the sprout. The Tav, it will be accomplished, right? You pick up all these letters in the alphabet, and you're starting to put all these things together, and you're seeing this whole other world happening. Yahweh has sworn and will not relent. You, who's he referring to? David or Yeshua? Well, maybe both. Let's just read. You will be a priest. What's a priest? Forever a Cohen. The word priest is spelled Kaf, Hey, Nun. Now, if you look in the dictionary, the word spelled Kaf, Hey literally means yes, so, truly, and thus. That's exactly the same word as Aleph, Mem, Nun. Absolute, sure, confident, verily, no chance of it being otherwise. That's Kaf, Hey. The word spelled Kaf, Nun means the same thing. If you add another Nun, it's where we get the word canon, which is something that's fixed, a certain size of metal, so you can put a certain amount of powder in and a certain weight of shot. It's all engineered and calculated, kind of like a Samick. And then you can light the thing up and it won't explode in your face, but it'll project that thing and boom, hit the target exactly. So Kaf Nun means to be registered, adjusted, tuned in, like a stereo, tuning in exactly that frequency. Kaf Nun is the exact tuning, calibrating, meticulous engineering. It's exactly Aleph Mem Nun that Avraham was doing with the stars, exacting specialist detail, like a master craftsman at his trade. That's a Cohen. A Cohen's job is to point his people to the pure, absolute truth. Every detail. That's what we're trying to do. Yes?
I desperately do not want to stop you because you're on a roll.
We've got 5 minutes.
Okay, good.
You just took 30 seconds. What are you doing, man? Okay. You be a Cohen forever. Now the word, just kidding. The word leolam is translated forever, which it means, but it also can mean unto the world. You will be a Cohen to the entire world, even those goyim who don't know how to read. Even those enemies that are round about you will look and see, and they'll drool and just, oh, I wish I was one of those guys. Because you are a king of righteousness. Now, the word king of righteousness is Melech Zadik. But this word has a yod at the end. But this word is king. Melchi, if you add a yod to the end, it basically means my. Now, if you look in the dictionary, Melech is not just king, but it means one who takes my counsel. This word lecha, lech lecha, get you out, it's the name of a parasha. Lecha means to you. The instructions, lamed, teaching and learning of the kaf, the lines of instruction. Mem is the instrument of or the place of. So the one who teaches my Torah instructions is also Melech, not just king, but it's one who implements as a tool what I said to you is your strength, that I gave you the strength of my hand, right? So Abraham took what Yahweh said and said, I believe it. Let's go do it. Let's go whoop 80,000. Melchizedek, El Elyon, I know you're the makers of the heavens and the earth. The book of Yeshar said Melchizedek was actually Shem, the guy that rode through on the ark with Noah. He saw what was going on before. He saw the majestic special effects of that flood coming out the other side. He saw Nimrod set up the Tower of Babel, the jerk, the fool, the scoundrel. He saw Yahweh scramble the languages, and the book of Yeshar says that he actually taught Abraham the ways of Yodhe-Vav-He, which is to say they didn't just meet that first time, but they knew each other because Melchizedek had taught Abraham when he was young. There's other stories, whether or not they're true. I'm just trying to show you they had this affinity for Kaf He Nun, about Zadik. There's no yod here. Zadi Dalet Kuf. What's Zadik? Righteousness. But if you look in the dictionary, it's also victory, deliverance, and salvation. So, Melchizedek is the one who, as a Cohen, teaches how to implement the Torah instructions of Yahweh, everything that he said, so that we will have victory, deliverance, and salvation as we do what he said. But there's one other word in here. It says, I have made you a priest forever after the order of. So let's look at this phrase in the last 5 minutes of after the order of. And just before we quit, if it's okay, I'd like, Charlene, if you could read this thing like you read yesterday. But let me get this real quick first. Okay, this is after the order of. It's Al, Dalet, Bet, Resh, Tav, Yod. That's translated after the order. Al Dabarti. Now, if you look at this word ayin lamed in the dictionary, it's usually high or to be raised up. As I mentioned the other day, it means yoke. It means in connection to, in reference to, concerning, next to, under, above. It's something, it's just something in reference. So this isn't necessarily above. Remember, I've exalted my word above all my name. Ayin lamed is that word. So it's in reference to the name, not necessarily above, though that's the way it's translated. But it could be above. It might be above. You have a mortar and a pestle. One of them, the high one, is called the ayin lamed yod, or the ayin lamed hey, because the two go together. Mortar and pestle always go together, right? Ephraim and Yehuda. What's a debarti? Yod at the end means my. Tav is the sign of the covenant. It also means past or future if it's put before or after a word. And like I said, even the translators disagree which it is. Dabar is basically word, matter, or thing. And as I said the very first day, it's also a barge or a raft. I'm going to talk fast now. A barge or raft towed behind. It's pasture and plague. That's what it's before you at the end of the day. So it's reference to that which is tugged along after you do something. So remember the very first day I talked about Amer and Dabar. And so Amer is a fine, high, lofty utterance, a declaration. What did Yahweh say? But the Dabar is, he said something which has something following, either the blessing or the curse. So if the Dabar are the words, remember the word 10 commandments is Dalet, Bet, Resh, Yod, Mem, Debarim, and they're not 10 words, they're 10 matters, and the word 10 means wealth and to be enriched. So they're 10 ways, they're 10 matters by which you can be enriched. There's another way to read 10 commandments. Okay, so here, you will be a priest forever to the world, showing them that what I told you was the way to be righteous so that you will have victory, deliverance, and salvation. Al debarti. Accordingly, yoke to exactly my covenant as I told you before by the word. Dalet bet is the word for bear, which is to just keep lumbering. You're not going to stand in front and stop the bear, and he's following hard after, but it's a soft whisper. All these words are about Dalet bet. Bet resh is the word bar, which is sun, or like a bar of metal, is one who has been milled to specification, milled to spec. A rough cut 2x4 is 2 inches by 4 inches, but it's got splinters, and so they put it through a milling, a planing process, and it comes out as 1.5 by 3.5, but it's milled to spec to take an engineered load. Bar mitzvot, mem, zadi, vav, tav. It's the same word as matzah, and it means to find out how to do something. Bar mitzvah is when a Jewish lad takes enough classes that he understands how to keep the commandments of the covenant. So to be bar is to be milled to spec according to the words that he told us, accordingly, the terms of the covenant. So what is Melchizedek al debarti? This word is translated order. What is the proper order? The order is the Samic Vav Dalet, which we talked about is the sod level of the arrangement, like the letters. Just like he arranged it, like the backbone and the ribs, the spine, this is the order of Yahweh's family business, the concerns of his house, of his kingdom, of all his instructions. The way it's arranged, balanced, the tipping of scales, the way everything works is the order by which Avraham and Melchizedek recognized that they were both on the same track. One functioning as this king, the other functioning as this priest. The two of them together, two witnesses showing the world, El Elyon, El Shaddai, Yahuwah, Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. Remember? The bullet point, the line, the bullet point. Abraham and Melchizedek, the two witnesses. This is accordingly to everything I told you, how you will have great success. So the order of Melchizedek is not some phantom thing doing away with this stuff. It's knowing exactly what he said, how to do it, appropriating it, so that we can both be a display, showing the world, as Melchizedek did, the king, he was a king of Salem, of peace, of truth, of everything perfectly arranged, which is what shalom means, but also as Abraham, who walked it out in the grind of, gee, my wife doesn't have a baby. Gee, I think that Pharaoh's going to steal her. Gee, I think that Abimelech is going to kill me, and pulling it all together and still conquering 80,000 snakes who came in to steal away his son, who himself probably deserved it. The point is, the order of Melchizedek is not some fancy apron and a robe you put on. It's you guys, if you want to be the order of Melchizedek, you better be doing this too. So that when you recognize another one, as Abraham recognized Melchizedek and shared the bread and wine, which is a picture of Yahushua, it's not, I believe, so I get to go to heaven. It's doing what he said as a firm, trusted specialist, artist, craftsman, well-educated, and putting his hands to the task, suffering the stars, doing whatever that job description is. That's the order of Melchizedek.
Hallelujah.
Shalom.